Howe the lads. On the 20th of November 2021, Eddie Howe managed his first game in charge of Newcastle United against Brentford. After 2.5 year absence from the sport, in which he spent some time in Madrid studying the tactics of none other than Diego Simeone, he returned in game week 12, in which we were facing Brentford, having in which Newcastle were just taken over by the Saudi investment fund PCP Capital Partners and the Reuben brothers, who, as their first order of business, sacked Steve Bruce when we were just sitting second bottom in the league table with 6 points out of 11 games, playing some of the most diabolical football Newcastle fans have ever had the displeasure of watching. Probably ever. Howe had to watch his managerial debut himself from a hotel room after testing positive for COVID 19, so he wasn't actually at the game. This, however, did not stop him from having an impact on the game, reportedly giving the final go ahead to substitute Ryan Fraser onto the field, who gave the assist to Alan Saint-Maximin in a 3-all equalizer, which saw us sit bottom of the league table after 12 games in the Premier League, which was a really, really bad time to be a Newcastle fan. Eddie Howe, however, has since gone on an unbelievable run with Newcastle. From the end of December onwards, this incredible run saw us not only comfortably avoid relegation, but finish in 11th position in the league. This would be the last time Eddie Howe finished outside of the top 10, and if we are being technical, the last time he actually finished outside of European space as well. The team carried on their incredible form and reached Champions League qualification as well as a League Cup final. Last season felt like a reality check, and even though we finished in a Conference League position, we eventually had to give that one away to Chelsea because Manchester United obviously won the FA Cup, who finished below us, not in a European space, but would go on to play European football because of that. But who were the names on those team sheets, and especially on the Newcastle United team sheets against Brentford? Who has remained at the club ever since and who has left? This is Eddie Howe's first ever Newcastle United 11 and where they are now. Carl Darlow was a perfectly serviceable goalkeeper who we bought in 2014 from Nottingham Forest, and he was perfectly serviceable in the meaning that he was there when you needed him most to get that point over the line last minute. Now, remember, at this moment in time, we were a relegation threatened side, so those points mattered. Carl Darlow certainly wasn't the problem back then. Um, he actually played 100 times for Newcastle, which is pretty impressive in itself, moving to Hull City on loan in the 2022-23 season, and again, this time on a permanent deal for £250,000 to Leeds, where he remains at the age of 34, which is a lot older than I remember for some reason, but he remains firmly rooted to their bench right there. One of the 2 to 3 players on this list who still is a first teamer to this day, Fabian Schär, will go down in Geordie history as one of our best central defensive players probably ever, combining a rugged, dominant defensive style with a ball playing ability which genuinely belies his position. I think this is also why he has been such a fan favorite on Tyneside, joining from Deportivo Alaves in 2014 for only 14 million pounds, or only 4 million pounds, sorry, which is an absolute snippet. He has since featured under Eddie Howe in 141 out of Eddie Howe's 158 games in charge of Newcastle United, which is absolutely insane. This is also why we have found it so hard to replace him. And I think that just proves the point as to why he is so fantastic. And this kind of Rolls Royce center back doesn't come around very, very often. He is already 33 years old right now, but he's still starting week in, week out, and I think we have to enjoy him while we can. A left footed central defender who represented the Republic of Ireland. I didn't remember a lot about Kieran Clark before making this video, which is probably all you need to know about him. I asked around with some of the Newcastle fans, and the consensus is very clearly that he's mostly remembered for being sent off in the 9th minute of their must win game, in which we were traveling to Norwich, and basically Yeah, Kieran Clark got sent off in the ninth minute, which meant we drew that game, firmly cementing our place in the relegation battle. Yeah, really, really not good times back then. Really not. I mean, ever since, the Geordies really haven't forgotten about that performance. He has moved on loan to Sheffield United for a season where he wasn't really memorable either. Afterwards, he signed for Stoke City on a free transfer, but they released him a year later as well, and now he is still without a club. So Kieran Clark right now is a free agent. Make of that what you will. Our club captain, both currently and at the time of Eddie Howe's appointment, Jamal Lascelles, moved from Nottingham Forest to Newcastle back in 2014, going back out on loan to Nottingham Forest for one more season before leading us straight back up at the first time of asking from the Championship to the Premier League as champions, in which he actually spent most of the season as captain. After this season, he became our on-field captain. Lascelles was gradually phased out since Eddie Howe has become Newcastle manager, but especially after the signing of Big Dan Burn and afterwards Sven Botman. But following the injury of the Dutchman, he was forced back into the starting 11 because Dan Burn was still playing at left back then. So he actually featured in five out of our six Champions League games last season, and he made a run of 11 game weeks in a row, I think it was, in the Premier League, which is pretty impressive. Afterwards, unfortunately, he got injured around about the turn of the year, which meant he has missed 43 games in a row ever since and has not been seen back in a Newcastle United shirt. And that just is a crying shame because I really hope we can give him the proper send off he deserves. A player who joined the club from Bournemouth back when we went down and Bournemouth actually went up to the Premier League. He immediately endeared himself in that first season in the Championship, scoring 12 goals and providing furthermore 8 assists. Whether it was him smashing in goals or smashing the corner flag after he did so, he genuinely was loved on the Tyneside and probably still is very loved on Tyneside if he ever comes back there. But as for his Eddie Howe days, there were his appearances were very numbered under Eddie Howe. Let's put it that way. He went from a starting 11 right winger to a more of a utility player under Steve Bruce, mostly featuring in left wing back or left mid sometimes. Under Eddie Howe, that really wasn't any different. Only 900 of his 15,000 minutes as a Newcastle United player have come under Eddie Howe, and he has ever since moved last summer on a free transfer to Portsmouth, for which he left the club which he left Swindon for back in 2011, I think it was. So yeah, uh, nice comeback story. I hope you have a good time there, Matt Ritchie. Jacob Murphy featuring in Eddie Howe's starting 11 actually really took me by surprise. Murphy joined Newcastle from Norwich for around £11 million and enjoyed loan spells at West Brom and at Sheffield Wednesday before eventually settling and becoming more and more of a rotation option. Mostly an option to bring off the bench or to rest some players in the cup, but never really having that much of an impact if we're being completely honest with ourselves. This season, however, Jacob Murphy has taken his game to an absolutely whole new level, maintaining the energy and the work ethic which saw him break into Eddie Howe's squad in the first place. Murphy has not weighed on his energy and work ethic, on his physical contribution. He has only added some much needed end product, and especially his connection with Alexander Isak, who is unbelievable himself, and his understanding of both Alexander Isak's infiltrations, positionings, running patterns. I mean, that makes him a real asset to us, especially since we haven't invested in a right winger probably for about 12 months too late now. And we have now sold Miggy Almiron, which means Jacob Murphy has rightfully outlasted Miggy, but I wouldn't have expected him to. So props to him for that. It shows how much Eddie Howe rates him, and To be honest, so do I. One more player who remains at the club but isn't really in the starting 11 is Joe Willock, a versatile midfielder capable of playing anywhere in the offensive midfield role or out on the wing. He has an incredible burst of pace and offers a lot of energy on the pitch. His minutes have, however, been reduced ever more so since his injury last season, but I think it was kind of going to happen anyway. If you look at the midfield now, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, there isn't really a natural place for him to go into that midfield, but I still really, really do like him as a squad option, and you need strong options off of the bench. Um, a lot of Geordies will also argue he is our best and most established backup central midfielder, so I do hope we still keep him around for some time. Next to him, however, in midfield, Harry Potter, he's coming for you. Yes, it is John Joe Shelby who joined Newcastle United all the way back in January 2016 when we bought him from Swansea. Just a year and a half before Liverpool, year and a half at Swansea, and then he came to us. He would go on to feature 202 times for us, even captaining the club on many occasions, actually. So he is a proud Toon Army hero, a player who will most likely be remembered for his lack of hair rather than his footballing ability. But the game I will always remember him most fondly for is the one in which he scored the free kick at Ellen Road in the 75th minute, securing our second and very, very, very much needed win in the process of that season, as well as kicking off Eddie Howe's unbeaten streak, which saw us eventually avoid relegation very, very comfortably. On deadline day in January 2023, we would sell Shelby to Nottingham Forest, who he left for a Turkish adventure. In January just gone by, he has come back to England, joining Burnley in the Championship. A free transfer from Bournemouth, Callum Wilson now sits very, very pretty in third on our all time Premier League goal scoring ranks, which is genuinely insane. With 47 goals, only Isaac with 50 and Alan Shearer with 148 goals. So only 101 goals more than Callum Wilson. But I mean, Alan Shearer, what can you say? So it is very much some great company for Callum Wilson to be in Isaac and Shearer. I personally don't want to think about where the club would have been if he had joined Aston Villa instead of joining us back when he and Ryan Fraser were available on a free transfer. A natural goal scorer when fitness isn't letting Wilson down. He genuinely is a ruthless Premier League level finisher still to this day, and I do believe for a team like, for example, an Everton or a Wolves, he could actually do a very, very good job because he is a clinical Premier League finisher. Unfortunately, he's just never fit anymore. This used to be a problem already when he was our only recognized center forward, but now it's only worsened. And at the age of 33, he is most likely on his way out. If not this summer, then definitely the summer after. But if I was putting money on it, I would think he was going out this summer. So let's hope we can send him off into the sunset in the right way with a trophy, the EFL trophy, even though I know it's going to be very hard without a left flank. On the right wing, the only game in which Joe Linton would play right wing apart from this season, then, that was actually Eddie Howe's debut. Joe Linton was far from a fan favorite when Eddie Howe first arrived. He was signed for 40 million from Hoffenheim in a deal which saw Mike Ashley put his balls on the line, shall we say, because he was the one gunning for this one to happen, pushing this one through, in spite of most of the sporting directors at the time advising him not to do so, especially not for that money. He pulled the trigger on the Brazilian anyway. The Brazilian came to the tune, and he massively struggled for confidence when playing in the number 9. Eddie Howe, however, used him on the wing in the first game, but recognized the physical capabilities Joe Linton possessed and the ball playing abilities Joe Linton had, and recognized Newcastle United were in need of another midfielder and especially some physicality in the midfield, and he converted him into a midfielder, and he has been absolutely revered since. He actually kind of already played as a midfielder in the Norwich red card game, which is genuinely the first game in which he did so, and he has not really looked back ever since, being transformed from a striker who got clowned on constantly to one of the most intimidating and physically capable midfielders in the Premier League right now. Wow. Finishing off our starting 11, we do that with Alan Sam Maximan, a player who I personally love. We bought in the summer along with Joelinton. Sam Maximan joined from Nice in France and immediately showed to the Toon army what he was all about: skill, trickery, flair. Sam Maximan is one of the most naturally gifted footballers. He genuinely is unbelievable. Impossible to dispossess. Saint Maximin did lack a bit of output, probably, but isn't that with most of those genuinely insane players that they do lack a bit of output? It's usually one of the other. Um, he was a player back when Newcastle were dreadful to watch, who genuinely could get you on the edge of your seat, and that means everything in football. So Saint Maximin was unbelievably important to us, also in just keeping us in the league. But unfortunately, as we all know, most beautiful stories come to an end due to PSR, and PSR meant we had to sell Saint Maximin to Al Ali for £25 million, where he didn't really set the world alight and had to join Mourinho's Fenerbahce last summer on a loan deal, where he's playing all right, but was linked with a move to Napoli in January, which unfortunately didn't materialize for him. Meaning, as things stand right now, he does go back to Saudi Arabia at the end of the season when his loan to Fenerbahce expires. But that is our starting 11. I suggest we go back onto the substitutes. These are the two players who actually saw minutes that day. First of all, Sean Longstaff, who is still at the club and performs about the same squad role as when Eddie Howe first joined the club, which is warm the bench, get put on when we need some more control in the middle of the park. But apart from that, you don't really want to see Sean Longstaff in your starting 11, I think. The second player who came on, we already touched on in the intro. It is obviously Ryan Fraser, who came off of the bench to assist Maxi's equalizer, avoiding defeat for Eddie Howe in his first league game, which is absolutely massive for the confidence, obviously. He now plies his trade for Southampton, firmly rooted to the bottom of the Premier League. Our unused substitutes were Martin Dubravka, who is still at the club, Jamal Lewis, who plays in Brazil for some weird reason, Isaac Hayden, who has also moved to Portsmouth but is still actually a Newcastle United player because that only is a loan. Emil Kraft, who is still a Newcastle United player. Javier Manquillo, who has since moved on from the club to Celta Vigo. Miguel Almiron, who only moved on last January to Atlanta United in the United States. And lastly, Dwight Gale, who ever since leaving Newcastle United played for Stoke City, Derby, and I think now he does play for Hibernian in Ireland, so he is winding down the days until retirement. Anyways, that was the end of the video. Did you find this interesting? I certainly did, finding out what Eddie Howe's first 11 actually looked like. If you did go on to enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to follow every social of ours, Magpie 24/7 on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Go follow out those pages, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.